Well, thank you, Susan. I carry another hat, of course, as the director of the Institute for International Economic Policy. So let me begin
About
there.
that one.
Yeah. So in that capacity, let me welcome you to the George Washington University. I'm James Foster, the director of the Institute for International Economic Policy of the Elliott School of International Affairs, which is where you're located. It's really our pleasure to be co-sponsoring this event with GW Cyber and the Internet Society, the local folks doing this. And of course, we thank the organizers for putting together a really great program, Digital Trade and Data Governance, your hub, Susan, Heinrich Boll Foundation, our neighbors at the Center for Global Development. Now, the Institute for International Economic Policy, or IEP as we call it, serves as a catalyst for high-quality, multidisciplinary, nonpartisan research on policy issues surrounding economic globalization. We have 4 signature initiatives: global economic governance, climate change in developing countries, extreme poverty, and U.S.-China economic relations, each of which has significant dimensions related to today's discussions. Second, we're a collection of scholars across many disciplines, each having significant research portfolios of our own. Third, we organize a wide array of events each year, including our annual conferences on U.S.-China economic relations, regional economic outlook conferences with the IMF, and the Urbanization and Poverty Conference at the World Bank. I look forward to seeing you at one of those in the future. Now, turning and returning to today's event, I want to just spend a short time, actually step 1 degree back from what Susan had suggested. I'd like to talk about a more general initiative here at the Institute related to today's topic. So let me go on through the, is this the one that's active, guys?
Yes.
Okay. And of course. Thank you. Right, so first question I'll just present you with, is more data better? Seems like a natural question. I think that that's you get a mixed answer to that. It's not clear. And what makes it clear, in my opinion, is measurement. I think there's a key role for measurement in all the discussions that we're thinking about today. What are we going to do with these data? What is measurement, by the way? It's a mapping from that complicated space of data that you've gone and collected to something over here that really helps it clarify the meaning, the importance of what you found. So this intuitive space that you're looking at things in is where you're mapping to from a very unintuitive space of data. The basic idea is that the measurement of a phenomenon can actually have really important impacts. It can encourage social action. It can coordinate actors in a way that virtually nothing else can. Everyone sees the data, sees the metric, and sees whether they're moving forward or not, and takes their own role and accountability in that lack of progress. And it can improve governance and accountability as, you're welcome. That's Kyle. It can improve governance and accountability for governments. What do I mean by that? And I'll tell you in a specific example. If you measure income poverty, as someone has said, it's everyone's problem and no one's problem. But if you're looking at multidimensional poverty with different policy spaces inherent in the index, then you can actually make some change before the next political cycle. Amazing thought. And so the feedback effect is that the government will try to improve things, will be able to, and it will show in time. But what really makes an effective metric in this context? So this is where our approach comes in, so-called intentional measurement. The goal is to construct an effective measure. The process is to consider very carefully what concept you're actually trying to measure, and for what purpose. And then, what characteristics should this measure, this summary statistic, have? These are kind of like proto-axioms that say, here's what we need in a measure in order for it to be effective. And then finally, subject the whole thing to a real rigorous understanding that's come from the words and work of Amartya Sen. A measure should be subjected to axiomatic analysis. And that's indeed what we do. This approach has been used in the development of the global MPI, Multidimensional Poverty Index, which is published each year in the Human Development Report. In the Gross National Happiness Index, you may have heard from, in Bhutan, my co-author was responsible for putting that together with the government. The Women's Empowerment in Agriculture Index from USAID, creating a there for women's empowerment. Statistical Performance Index, which builds upon the Statistical Capacity Index of the World Bank, and the Better Jobs Index at the Inter-American Development Bank. I encourage you to have a look at some of those and see whether you believe that they are indeed effective. It will also be used to update the Human Development Index over the next few months. Now, does this approach really work? Great question. We think so. And I give you as an example the global MPI. This is what it looks like, 3 dimensions, not just income, but other things as well, education, health. The various indicators are given there. But picture, the complementary nature of this to the World Bank's data is apparent. And the granularity of it is quite apparent as well. You get down to really small districts using the data that we use, the DHS data. And the decomposition just makes it so policy friendly to understand where the problems are and how to address them. Second example, and this is actually far more important, a myriad of national MPIs. Countries have adopted this general approach in measuring multidimensional poverty. You know, SDG 1.2. These countries include Mexico, Colombia, Vietnam, and the list that I give up here. The key aspects of this is that the country owns this measure. They create it. They put it together with their own dimensions, own cutoffs, and their own ideas of what's important, and therefore they own it. It isn't like it's been imposed on them. They use the global MPI as an example to draw from, but it supports good governance. Again, that same example I talked about earlier, and coordination within governments. Let me give you an example of the coordination. This is the measure of Colombia, put together by the folks of President Santos. And you can see that it includes very different dimensions than what we had just a second ago. But this picture is the one I want to show you. Talk about coordination. The creation of a poverty committee, all these ministers and the president get together frequently to discuss the data, the results, what's been happening over the last 2 months. And when things don't go according to plan, there's accountability. This is what I am getting at with governance and collaboration arising from measurement. Now, I don't have time, but if you clicked on this little picture, you'd have President Carlos Alvarado of Costa Rica describing how his country uses the multidimensional index and how he budgets based on it, how stakeholders interact with the government through it, how the private industry is working to decrease the MPIs in each company. So decrease poverty, and these are companies taking it on themselves to look at the conditions of their workers and provide investments to decrease poverty among their own workers. So quite a fascinating discussion. This is online. This was the last General Assembly in New York when he discussed this. Finally, And I won't go into it in the depth that Susan had advertised. Instead, I'll just show you a location where you can look at the paper. But the World Bank's new statistical performance index, built using the same thoughtful, intentional approach to measurement, incorporating the various dimensions that are needed for knowing whether a national statistics system is really able to do the job that it's set forth to do. I won't get into details. Instead, I'll refer you to this paper, and then let's move on. Thank you. Okay, let the conference begin.
Okay, but before you leave, does anyone want to ask a brief question to Dr. Foster?
Anything you want. No? Fine, let's let the conference begin.
All right.